Good morning, everybody. What's up? Welcome into another edition of the Sac City Podcast. I am your host, the one and only Vinny Milani, joined as always by ya boy, the reigning, the defending, the undisputed, somewhat heavyweight valedictorian of the show, AJ Johnson. Below him, we have my best friend in the whole entire world. He just gets smarter and smarter by the day with every right prediction that he guesses. Last night with the Colorado Avalanche, obviously. He is Aaron, the Mukesiah Mukes. Beside him, below me, we have the smoothest voice in sports casting, good old Dylan Kearns. It is a beautiful June 23rd morning here in the city. Good morning, Sac City is what we like to call it. Episode 45 is about to be underway. We are breaking down the NFC West and their fantasy outlooks. That's the Rams, Niners, Cardinals, and Seahawks. Lots of good chatter today. AJ, how you feeling after last night's tough loss?
So you could have gone to anybody on the panel.
No, I could
anything
not.
In the world. And you just come
Never
straight at me for the hurt because you're angry that we took care of y'all. And now we're being beaten. You know, it is what it is. You know, look, 2 in a row. We made it back to the third final cup. You know, Stanley Cup, final cup. Anyways, it's cool. You know, we'll be back next year. We'll try again.
Oh, you're already saying it's over. See, that's how shitty Lightning fans are. They're just so shitty. Yeah. They're just so shitty, shitty Lightning fans. But,
you know, seeing as how we've looked on the road in Colorado, I mean, I'm not saying we can't take this one.
That's
take 3 in a row. Take 3 in a row is going to be very, very hard, and I feel like it's very unlikely. Yeah. I would love to be wrong. Please prove me wrong. I'm all about that.
That's what I'm saying all along with the Aaron's predictions. I'm like, man, I really think Tampa's just that good, but I'm hoping I'm wrong, and I'm hoping Aaron's right because Aaron did say Colorado. What was it, 6 or 7 or 5 or?
I said 6. I give Tampa another game, but I also thought perhaps it'd be 2-2 at this point, and then Colorado would win game 5. And now I'm thinking more Colorado in 5 because it's going to be a hell of a time for them to try to go to Colorado now and get that dub. It's Colorado's going to be, in Vinny's word, it's going to be buzzing.
I said to Vinny last night, man, that the first game, which we didn't have any business being in the beginning, to get back to where we did, that steal would have been huge at this point now. Like, looking back, you can't go back, obviously, but what we would give to have gotten that first game in OT that way, like, that would have changed the entire outlook of the finals here. So it's all right. Maybe Braden Point will come back and play one. Maybe that'll help, and we'll get some life back in our system.
Fun fact: Stanley Cup final, NBA Finals. Don't tell me why. That's how it is. He said finals, so I had to correct him.
So we move on here.
Boo this man. Boo this man. All right, let's move on to our football talk here. We're going to talk about the morning headlines, and we're putting a little fantasy spin on this today. Yesterday it was reported that from the Athletics, Greg Allman, that he wouldn't be surprised if Chris Godwin opens the season on the PUP list. That could mean a big-time spot for Russell Gage. AJ, with that news being said of Chris Godwin possibly opening up the season on the PUP list, how far does Russell Gage move up on your draft board?
I mean, I'd probably grab him 8th, 9th round. Like, I don't need. It's good to have that guy knowing he's going to get some work. And he was pretty decent in Atlanta for us. I'm happy to have him, but I'm not knocking down the door to go get him over anybody else. The fact of the matter is, 6 weeks, there's still a Mike Evans there. Cameron Brate's going to look to get more work again now that Gronk is out. That's where it really hurts, is the fact that if you're losing Godwin for 6 weeks and now you no longer have Gronk, it's going to be there's not as much talent as you were expecting once upon a time going into Tampa. So Russell Gage is going to be looking to have a great 6 first weeks. And I mean, I take all the advantages I can as him, but I don't think many other people would be chomping at the bit to get him. So you may be able to grab him a little later than you expect either way.
Yeah, his ADP right now has him going in the 10th round, around the 10th, 11th round. Aaron, I know you're a big Russell Gage guy. That was one of your ADP value picks. And obviously, as we get closer to draft time, these ADPs are going to go up and they're going to go down. And that's just how fantasy football works. Russell Gage is going to be one of those players that's going to see a boost the more news that comes out if Chris Godwin is to miss time at the beginning of the season. Where would you draft Russell Gage right now, Aaron? His ADP round 10, hearing this news. ADP has not been updated for this. So is it still round 10 or is it higher? That's a minus. That's a big time minus.
It was still muted from before. I love Russell Gage in round 10, like beyond love him. If he's there in round 10, I'm clicking draft every time. But I actually think he should be going in round 7. And I'm not joking about this. I think people are missing something here with Russell Gage in a redraft league and Tom Brady. Mike Evans is going to do what Mike Evans does. Chris Godwin's obviously going to probably miss time at the beginning of the season. It's going to take him some time to get back to where he was, and they don't really have a reason to rush him back, right? We're talking about a team that's very good, probably going to be in the playoff hunt. They don't want to bring him back too early. They have a guy like Russell Gage who's shown to be pretty effective over the past couple of seasons with quarterback play that's been less than what Tom Brady's produced. So I really, really like Russell Gage here. We all know what his skill set does that matches Tom Brady. That's work out of the slot, over the middle, short passing game. It's what Tom Brady likes to do. I love Russell Gage. I think he's one of the best steals in this draft. For me, I would look to take him anywhere between round 7 and round 10. Now, again, round 7 is a stretch. Like you're pushing the envelope to go to round 7. But if you did it, I'm not looking at you like, oh my God, what kind of pick was that? You're stupid. I actually think it's a good pick.
And let's remember too, like you mentioned, their ADPs are going to go up, they're going to go down, but like so, you're talking about Chris Godwin being out and Russell Gage being the benefactor of that. As you start mock drafting, you're going to get a feel for this, anyways. You know, he may have that ADP at 10 right now, but if it comes out and becomes clear Chris Godwin's going to miss 6 weeks, maybe that's one of the guys you start looking at in your mock drafts to see where people are grabbing him and what his ADP looks like too. So, I mean, if it still turns out that you can get him around the 9th round, I sometimes, if I really want that guy, I automatically go and grab that extra round ahead, knowing that there's other guys I can target after the round I would have gotten him in without all the injuries or updates, so to speak. So that's another way to look at it and things to keep in mind as you get into this redraft mock draft season.
I like Mike Evans. I like Mike Evans here, and here's. I mean, I
like.
The question wasn't about Mike Evans.
I know it's not.
He's a great
receiver. The question was about this Russell Gage's ADP makes sense.
I don't think it makes sense. I don't like Russell Gage. I like Mike Evans. That was my point, and the reason being is I like Mike Evans for 3 weeks. Let him showcase his touchdowns. Use him as trade bait, saying, "Look, Gronky's getting the scores. Trade him off."
You know, I like winning. I would like to win the lotto and not just off $5 off a scratch off. Like that's what I would.
What does that have to do with anything that was asked?
What
Mike Evans is a top receiver, but
I don't like Russell Gage.
But Mike Evans is a top receiver every year.
So that's
what is different about this year.
No, so that's what you're saying here is the fact that you don't like Russell Gage. It's not about Mike Evans. You could have left that off the list.
That's what I said. I said I don't like Russell Gage. I said that.
All right. So how about this? Instead of telling us you like Mike Evans, can you tell me why you don't like Russell Gage?
I don't like Russell Gage because he's in a brand new spot right here with Tom Brady. He's got to build chemistry. I think that's going to take a little bit of time. Sure, he's got training camp. Sure, he's got OTAs, whatever he's got to go through. There's still some other weapons on this team that I think could potentially have impacts in that wide receiver room.
Cyril Grayson?
This is what I was waiting for. This is exactly what I was waiting for. So you take Chris Godwin, who's well over 100 targets a year. You take Rob Gronkowski, which is a number of targets a year, and you get rid of him.
Yeah.
Tom Brady, they throw the ball a ton. Yep. Tom Brady led the league in passing. Where do those targets go?
Cam Brate, OJ Howard will get some.
OJ Howard ain't playing in Tampa.
He's not even on the team anymore.
Cam Brate, I seriously think that they could allocate the passes everywhere. I mean, you see him.
To who? To Cam Brate?
Freaking Scotty Miller. I mean, there's still guys on the team that can make plays. Tyron Johnson.
So this is where you lose me. They didn't pay any of those guys. They paid Russell Gage.
They're there.
No, they paid Russell Gage. This is a classic case of you're looking for something because you don't want it to be Russell Gage. And I'm not saying you have anything personal against him, but it's too obvious to say it's Russell Gage. They paid the man. Why would they not use him? He's going to be on the field, yes or no? Is it fair to say Russell Gage will be on the field?
He will be on the football field.
Is it fair to say that Russell Gage has shown to be better than Scotty Miller, Tyler Johnson, Cyril Grayson? Is that fair to say?
It is. Has he played with Tom Brady? No.
Okay, so is this just about the chemistry with Tom Brady not being there yet? And you're assuming that it doesn't get to where you think it needs to be?
I guess that's some of it. But then again, it's once Godwin comes back, he's worthless.
Really? So this is so asinine.
Why?
Tampa
He's got
Bay
September to build chemistry. Then
no. Tampa Bay is not able to sustain 3 wide receivers. Is that what you're saying? Because they did it with Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans.
Yeah, they did that last year.
So are they capable of doing it? So what does Chris Godwin coming back have to do with that then?
I don't think that Russell Gage is one that can do that.
So this is more about a talent thing with Russell Gage than anything.
Yes.
That's where we're getting at.
What?
So to be fair, Russell Gage is being drafted as what? Wide receiver 47, 48?
Yes.
Russell Gage in Atlanta, and I'm sorry, AJ, a shit burger of a franchise right now. He finished the last 2 years better than that with a inferior quarterback play, with not as many weapons on the outside to take looks away from him because he was without a Julio Jones, without a Calvin Ridley. So he was the focal point in the passing game, and he was still able to produce wide receiver 4 value. Now you're telling me he goes to a better situation, a better team, a better quarterback, a better offense, a better line, better run game, and he's going to be worse.
Mm-hmm.
Any quarterback that I would want to come into that I hadn't played with and would like to gain chemistry with and think it'll be easier, it's probably Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Not to mention, go look at it. Tom Brady's the one who advocated for Russell Gage to be there. And I'm sorry, there is not a signing that goes on in Tampa Bay that Tom Brady doesn't fight for. So if Tom Brady wanted him, Tom Brady's seen something in him, or they've had some sort of communication off the field.
Tell me, is Gage a slot
he's
guy?
going to play the role that Tom Brady loves to throw to.
I'm going to put a pin in this just because we are going to have an NFC South show where we break down the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If you want to listen to that, and if you want to watch that happen, just tune in because we're going to talk about it. You're not going to want to miss it. It's just must-see TV because Dylan over here.
It's
just what we need
what
to do.
Producers do.
Yes,
they bring
just
a question out, start an argument, and then say, "Oh no, we got to move on, guys."
I wanted to talk about Breece Hall and the reports that were coming out of camp there, but we're not going to because of time. We're going to now move on into our getting into position for the NFC West, the Rams, Niners, Cardinals, and Seahawks here. If you missed our show on Tuesday morning, well, 1, go back and listen to it and watch it. And 2, this is now the time of the show where we get into the position breakdown of these divisions and discuss how we rank them, how it shapes up with who's high, who's low. Dylan, you killed it yesterday with the running back talk of Kareem Hunt, J.K. Dobbins. Great conversation on that. I'm going to go to you first here again with the running backs in the NFC West. How would you rank them?
How would I rank the NFC West? You know my boy Rashad Penny. No, he's not right there.
Yeah, so
I wanted to see Aaron's face. I got a poof out of him, so I'll count that as a win. You got everybody in the San Francisco backfield. You got everybody in the Seahawks backfield.
Yeah, so what's your ranking here, buddy? What's your ranking here? So you got Rashad Penny, Cam Akers, Daryl Henderson, James Conner. Yeah. Because I'm trying to get you to rank them instead of going down the list. I'm trying to go through this much faster.
I'm thinking, Vincent, and I got it right here, and I'm going to go, this is ugly. This is sick. Give me Cam Akers. Give me James Conner, Daryl Henderson, Rashad Penny.
Wow.
No. Yeah, Elijah Mitchell, Rashad Penny. That's it.
This fool put Daryl Henderson ahead of Elijah Mitchell.
Yes.
You do realize Daryl Henderson's a backup, right?
Yes.
You do realize Daryl Henderson has never had a great season, right?
I meant talent alone. We're talking.
We're talking fantasy football, Dylan.
Got you. I'm going Cam Akers, James Conner.
Remember, hold on, time out here. Time out. Remember, AJ, remember before the show, I go up to Dylan and I'm like, have you looked at the doc? And he's like, yeah, I looked at it earlier this afternoon. This is why you look at the doc and actually think about the doc during the day.
He said it at 2 p.m. and I looked at it at 2:01.
You don't come on the air and sound like an absolute jackass of saying, okay, I got Cam Akers, Daryl Henderson, the backup over Elijah Mitchell. You don't sound ridiculous. And I wanted to go to you because I thought you'd hit me again with a good take like you did yesterday, and you did not. AJ, please give me your top running backs in the NFC West in terms of fantasy. Do you want me to go over them again? Or good?
It's cool. It's cool. I actually, while I may not have given myself supporting reasons, I did rank the 4 that I have in the NFC West. I didn't include any backups, because it's fantasy, so I figured we would just think about the starters in this case here. I went Cam Akers, then I went Elijah Mitchell, then I went James Conner, despite the year he had last year, and then I went Rashad Penny. Granted, Rashad Penny came on very strong late in the season. I mean, he was spelling for an injured Chris Carson, who we are now hearing will probably not be a factor. So this is really the first full season we may even see out of Rashad Penny. And even still, he had a couple injury issues. James Conner had a fantastic season, a lot of red zone touchdowns. But with the loss of Chase Edmonds, we know Aaron likes Benjamin. I think that you need a little extra time to put them both together and watch if James Conner is going to lose touches to what an Benjamin can do, because he showed flashes. Elijah Mitchell had a breakout rookie season, but Cam Akers, 1, is my guy, go Florida State, and 2, the veracity he showed in getting back last season, coming back from injury and almost record-breaking time, in my opinion, and then being pretty usable throughout the playoffs. I think you're going to see that continue into this upcoming season. I don't know that Daryl Henderson is really going to be taking as much run away from them, despite the fact that they really love to RBC. But I think Cam Akers is going to have an otherworldly type of season.
So ADP right now, and this is why I really wanted to talk about the running back position within the NFC West, there is the obvious player that we loved in the draft process, and it's Kenneth Walker, or now what the whole fantasy world is now just referring to as Ken Walker. I think that's what he likes to be pronounced as now. Ken Walker's ADP right now, in terms of this NFC West, he's going a few picks behind Rashad Penny. He's going ahead of Daryl Henderson. He's going ahead of Chris Carson, who we don't know how he's going to go. He's going ahead of these guys, and I personally think that I would have Ken Walker over Rashad Penny at the season's end. It's going to end up being Ken Walker being the number 1 running back in Seattle, and I would rank him higher than Rashad Penny because I've seen what he did in college, and I obviously know it's different college to NFL, but this kid is talented. He's very special. They have a high investment on him. I think he's going to get in sooner rather than later and become an impactful running back on a team where you have Drew Lock as your quarterback, and we're going to talk about DK Metcalf and the wide receivers in a little bit. But I think that Ken Walker ends up becoming a bigger focal point of this offense than we think maybe right now.
Womp, way to steal my thunder. This is what you're supposed to host. You throw it to Dylan, you throw it to AJ, and then right when you're getting ready to throw it to me, and I'm going to come in there and kill it, you take all my thunder. You're absolutely right. To be honest, you're absolutely right. The ranking order, just to kind of get back to it, I disagree with the 2 guys. I actually think James Conner is number 1. I think I've seen enough from last year in that offense and the way they want to use him in that offense to say he's number 1. Cam Akers has been inefficient. I know he's coming back from the injury, so it was tough, but he was inefficient when he came back. I think he'll have a good year. I think that'll be close, but I've seen James Conner have top 5 upside potential. We haven't seen that from Cam Akers yet. So I'll stick with James Conner number 1. I think it's a little bit safer there. Cam Akers number 2, Elijah Mitchell number 3, and my number 4 is Ken Walker. And you said everything, but I'm going to bring up a point. If I hear one more person talk about Rashad Penny, like he didn't just have a few good games last year, We talking about Rashad Penny like he still didn't finish as a running back 41 last year. We're talking about Rashad Penny like he hasn't missed 6 games last year, 13 games the year before that, 6 games the year before that. The man's been hurt every year. And lo and behold, he's okay to draft, but heaven forbid you draft Dalvin Cook, who misses 2 games a year. Like, heaven forbid you make that selection. It's stupid. It's asinine. Rashad Penny showed flashes. I'm not saying he can't be good.
Showed flashes. He was a monster the last 5 weeks of the year.
Great. 5 weeks of the year. It does no good if you're only playing 5 weeks out of the year.
If it's the last 5 weeks going into the next season, it doesn't matter if he shows flashes. If he has a great October game, no one cares. If he finishes the year as the best rusher in terms of rushing yards over the last 5 weeks of the year, that shows it.
You're missing the point. You're now talking to people in June that have to go into this draft and say, where am I drafting Rashad Penny? How do you trust drafting Rashad Penny over guys that have been healthier, over guys that have consistently done it, not guys mind you, his last 5 weeks of the season, you talk about how great he was. He had some good games. He also had a 6-point game in there. No. He also had a 6-point game in there. He had a 7-point game in there. He just, the last 2 weeks, let me be even more clear about this. Fantasy playoff weeks, he went the first week of the playoffs, he had 6 points. 6.
Playoffs.
Oh, 6 points, which means somebody got booted out because of that. The next week, he had 19, and then he had 32. You're talking about week 18, which nobody plays in fantasy, where he had 25. Other than that, he was regular and pedestrian, to say the least. So
we're not talking about – finish your statement.
To say that you're going to go into June, July, and August when you're going to have to draft and make that selection, I don't know how you trust it based on 4 or 5 games at the end of last year.
I don't see the way he finished the year last year was great. That's what I'm looking at when I'm looking at Rashad Penny. He got the starting role. Yes, health is a big factor with him. That's the one thing holding him back. But the guy's a beast. You can't deny it. When he's healthy, the dude is a great running back. He is. Just look at his life. You could mention week 18 fantasy nobody plays. I don't care. The way that he was set up towards the end of last year, he's coming into this year as.
So what about those weeks? What about those weeks when he ran 6 carries, 9 yards, 7 carries, 7 yards, 2 carries, 19 yards? He's a beast though. 10 carries, 35 yards, 11 carries, 39 yards. But he's a beast though. When he plays, he's a beast. No.
Yes.
You told me when he plays, he's a beast. And I'm listing off games where he's had double-digit carries.
Back in college. You talk about Ken Walker in college.
We aren't talking about college football, Dylan. We were talking about the NFL.
About NFL, where he was
the man's been in the league for how many years? How many years has Rashad been in the league?
A very long time in the league.
And yet you're still waiting. You're still waiting.
Yeah, and I saw it last year.
Oh my god!
Because he's when he gets to work.
Let me drop a stat in here because again, research hard to do. And this is to defend Dylan here and really to see what your thoughts are on this stat here. Because there are going to be people, obviously, that have the same opinion as Dylan, where they like Rashad Penny. And it's not saying that he's a bad running back, but over the last 10 years, Rashad Penny, his highest rush yards per attempt in a season last year was 6.29, ahead of guys like Alvin Kamara in 2017, who had 6.7 or 6.07, Adrian Peterson 6.03 in 2012. Like what he did last year. That's such a
terrible stat, Vinny. That is a terrible. No. Listen. Hold on. No, let me finish because that's terrible.
I'm not done yet.
You're stat picking over a guy that played 4 games. That had 4 games. He had 3 games where he went 135, 170, and 190. You're picking out 3 or 4 games. The guys you're comparing him to played 16 games in a season. So when you put him over Alvin Kamara and Adrian Peterson, the volume is not there. So to say that is just asinine. You can't do that. That's stat picking.
But that shows how dominant he was towards the end of last year.
Oh my God. It shows how dominant he was for a 4-game stretch.
Yes.
You average that out over 17 games. Average that over 17 games. It's not as impressive as an Alvin Kamara who's doing it over 16, 17 games. Or an Adrian Peterson. So when you say he's over guys like that, you're really skewing the numbers because it was only 4 games. 4 in his whole career.
And he rounded it up to this year.
From week 10 on last season in half-point PPR, Rashad Penny was the RB8.
Yep.
last
Oh my
year.
God.
I'm not arguing. I am on your side. I do not believe in Rashad Penny.
The man didn't even play in week 10. He didn't play in week 12. He had 2 carries in week 11. He had 10 in week 13 for 35 yards. We are talking about 3 games to end the season. That's it. And now we're all of a sudden on the Rashad Penny train.
And
because how we finished.
I am not on the Rashad Penny hype train or whatever.
I don't mean you by saying I meant like Dylan's all aboard that train.
But I do know that there are people in the fantasy community that do like Rashad Penny. So we are here to either nix that or, in Dylan's case, defend that here. I personally think when you even you can throw all the stats aside, you can talk about whatever you want, but where do they draft Ken Walker? That's a high investment in him. And if they believe, I'm thinking that, to me, when you look at Rashad Penny's season, Dylan, you're right. He did finish strong. He had a good finish to the last season.
Didn't have to.
But
they gave him a 1-year deal.
But
that's a loss Chris Carson to a career-ending injury, more than likely.
Again, right?
Because they're losing their other investments. You got to go in with something.
If you think about this, though, he finished the year strong, and they still went out and invested a high pick in Ken Walker on a team that has a lot of holes. They're almost entering that rebuild mode. But they invested highly in
overselling the of Rashad Penny. Like, you're saying people like him in the fantasy community. He's going RB32. He's going after backups in Devin Singletary, Tony Pollard. He's right next to Michael Carter, who's splitting carries, Kareem Hunt. Like, he's not going people are not buying into this Rashad Penny hype. He's going as an RB4. He should go as an RB4. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with his ADP. I think us talking about the fact that he had a great 3 games and trying to sell him for more than what he is actually just a false narrative. The people in the fantasy community so far have spoken because his ADP is RB4. So the only one that really likes him is Dylan Kearns. And we all know how Dylan Kearns finishes fantasy football.
I love me some Rashad Penny.
All right.
Penny given Sunday, baby.
Let's move on now. We're gonna get into the full division previews here and the full division NFC West fantasy outlooks. AJ, we're halfway through the show now. It would probably be a really good time to tell the people at home where they can follow us at.
Well, if you're still with us, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, Sac City. We apologize for hearing Dylan talk for 15 straight minutes about Rashad Penny. But if you want to hear more of it, because we promise you he will continue to do it, hit us up at Sac City Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. And, I think I missed one. But even if I did, once you get to one, you're going to get to the other ones, and you're going to hit the subscribe button there. Then you're going to follow to the next one. We should get a link tree, guys. We should put our link tree together so everyone can just go right down the link tree and hit that subscribe and follow. Ooh, we're going to learn you, though. We're going to learn you, though. On every single platform at Sac City Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Your boys are back in town every single morning. Hit us up Wednesday through Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. #GMSC.
DMs are open.
That was beautiful. What a beautiful read.
I was vibing with the music.
Good morning, Sac City. We're now moving on to the NFC West breakdowns, fantasy outlook, starting with the Los Angeles Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions. Aaron, I know you just got a whole lot of talking done with this Rashad Penny talk, but I'm going with you first here to continue talking about running backs. And we mentioned Cam Akers, we mentioned Daryl Henderson, and you brought up Daryl Henderson's performance when he did return last season. There was some inconsistencies. How should people feel about drafting Cam Akers or maybe drafting Daryl Henderson, or how much value comes from this running back position in Los Angeles? That's a minus.
I think it's tough. I think it's one of the tougher backfields to kind of navigate just because of the history of Sean McVay kind of going with the hot hand. Not saying that I don't think Cam Akers is the guy, because I do. We've seen Daryl Henderson. We've seen him be up and down, and he's had his moments, but I think Cam Akers is the more sustainable running back, and I think he will be in that offense. He's got power, he's got speed, he has the playmaking ability, and he can catch out of the backfield too. I do think they're going to use both of them. And I think it's a matter of just when and how many touches that he actually gets. I still think this Rams football team wants to rely heavily on the run. And I think that's going to be a benefit to Cam Akers. I think he's going to be their goal line guy. So I think he'll be productive. He's a year coming back from the Achilles. He should be better there. I still would weigh it out probably 60-40 Cam Akers. But he'll lose some touches to Daryl Henderson, and there'll be times where Daryl Henderson will break off for 20 yards, break off for 15, and next thing you know, Daryl Henderson's the one with 14 carries in that game just because of what Sean McVay likes to do. But over the course of the season, I think it'll weigh itself out. I think Cam Akers becomes the lead guy, and you can feel pretty comfortable with running with a guy like that as your RB2.
What do you have to say to the people that bring up what he did in the playoffs last season? Because if you look at his numbers through last postseason, it was slightly disappointing. 0 touchdowns, average 3.48 yards per attempt, only 17 attempts per. I mean, it really was inconsistent when Cam Akers returned last season in the playoffs. And obviously, returning from a serious injury, that might be a big factor. But how much thought are you putting into what his performance looked like in the playoffs last year?
None. I mean, we saw that it looked lackluster, but let's be honest, he didn't play one regular season game. And then you just throw into the playoffs, which defenses play tighter. It's harder to run. Finding running lanes is not easy. I put zero stock into the fact that he didn't play very well in the playoffs. A lot of teams had trouble running the football. To me, it's a clean slate. I look back to 2 years ago when he started to take over that lead job at the end of the season. He started to play better. You could see what they had in him. I think it'll be more of that. I don't think Cam Akers is going to ever be a guy under Sean McVay that will be the top 7, 8, 9 back that maybe we think he has the potential to be just because of their offensive system. But again, solid RB2, and I think you can feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, he's being right now drafted as the RB17. Him, James Conner, and Elijah Mitchell all going roughly around the same area. Cam Akers is RB17, James Conner, RB16, Elijah Mitchell, RB22, all around that same area. So it's going to be a kind of a toss-up when evaluating these 3 NFC West running backs. Dylan, at the wide receiver position, the Los Angeles Rams brought in Allen Robinson, who we have been known to talk about a lot on this show, coming off of a very, very disappointing might be generous to say, even for what Allen Robinson did last season in Chicago. Do you see a bounce back season for Allen Robinson, and can we trust that when drafting him in fantasy football this year?
I think you see a little bit of both. He's not going to be as bad as last year. I mean, 410 yards. Are you freaking bleeping me? Are you bleeping me there? I mean, you look at this guy. He's all over the place on the football field. He's a physical specimen who's a great 50-50 baller. Thank God he gets himself a quarterback, right? I mean, it's Matthew Stafford is going to be just a dream come true for him. I'm sure he's been thinking about having a quarterback for years, going from Bortles to Trubisky to freaking whoever the Bears throw in there. And then you got Fields for a year with a weird offensive scheme. And however you want to go about it, he's feeling pretty good right now. I think fantasy-wise, I mean, this guy is just he's a solid wide receiver. And I know what's sort of strange here is his touchdown numbers. He only had 1 last year, 6 the year before, 7 the year before that, and then he had 4. And like he's not a big-time touchdown guy. Those aren't insane touchdown numbers. He's not getting like 8, 9, 10 touchdowns a year. You think for a guy of his size of 50-50 ball, he could go up and score more touchdowns. That's not what he's been doing as of late. Maybe a good quarterback helps him out. A good scheme with Sean McVay helps him. I think he does bounce back. I don't think we're seeing those 1,200-yard seasons, the big time. He might be somewhere around the 790 to 840 range with maybe 5 touchdowns, about 60 catches.
I love Allen Robinson this year. I love him where he's being drafted. I
love Allen Robinson every year.
I'm very
like him
hopeful.
in freaking Detroit.
Like you said, though, with Matthew Stafford now as his quarterback, and you brought up the fact that he's not necessarily the touchdown guy, and that could be what Cooper Kupp does, and who knows what Cooper – we talk a lot about Cooper Kupp this coming season in fantasy and him still being a top 5 wide receiver. Some say the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. But Allen Robinson, I think, is going to be a big part of this offense, obviously losing Robert Woods. Who knows if Odell Beckham Jr. comes back. you talked earlier when we were talking about the Bucs and the targets that they're losing. Allen Robinson is going to come in here and take a lot of these targets from Matthew Stafford, who is the best quarterback he has had in his entire career. I think this is going to be this is a bounce back year for Allen Robinson. Right now, he's going as the wide receiver 33, going right behind players like Elijah Moore, Adam Thielen, Tyler Lockett, Jerry Jeudy, who we talked about on maybe we'll talk about him in our AFC West show. I like everything about Allen Robinson this year. And I know you talk about me loving him,
you do,
but it's hard not
Nothing
to
wrong
like
with it.
It's hard not to like it this year, right?
His
am
ADP is his ADP is way too low, but I think Dylan hit it right on the head, to be honest. I think that's Dylan's best take today. He will have a bounce back year, but I too also do not think it's going to be some crazy back to 1,200 yards. And, he's never been a big touchdown guy, 14 touchdowns or whatever his career high is. I think it'll be kind of a middle of the road. Borderline, could maybe crack into the wide receiver 2 on a good year, but probably closer to a wide receiver 3. But that's still better than what he's being drafted at. So you're probably getting good value on him either way.
Yeah, I see a low end wide receiver 2 performance season from him, and high with his upside being a high end wide receiver 2. I don't see him being a wide receiver 1, but I do see a ceiling of wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 2 this season. Let's move on to the San Francisco 49ers. AJ, before you fall asleep over there, I'm going to give you this one here. San Francisco 49ers. A lot of the talk this offseason has been about Deebo Samuel, whether it's the contract, whether it's his usage, whether it's his new quarterback in Trey Lance. What do you see Deebo Samuel's season looking like after all of that stuff transpired this offseason?
I think it's going to regress. He had a great season last year, and I think the word that Aaron enjoyed using was unsustainable. And he did for much longer than Aaron was allowed or was thinking it would happen. But, let's be honest, this guy was averaging about 18 yards per reception, I think, 11 yards per target. And with Trey Lance, even though he's a big play type of quarterback, can make a lot happen down the field, I don't think he's going to be able to sustain that with him again for another season. Now, granted, I still think Deebo is still going to be one of the best players in fantasy. With his usage, I think is going to drop back. I think with using the quote-unquote wide back position, oh, cool, you got the quotes, using the wide back position last season, they're not going to do so much of that. A lot of that came with the injuries they were feeling and needing to get somebody who was talented in the backfield, and he showed he was able to do that. He's made it very well known that's not something he wants to continue doing. Running backs get beat up a lot. He wants to play receiver and get that contract, and I don't think he'll have to. They went and drafted another running back for him. Elijah Mitchell should be back to full health, and what he showed he can do last season will carry on this year, and Deebo can go back to being a receiver and use in the backfield sparingly just to give other looks to defenses. So he's still going to be a great receiver, but I definitely think you should expect him to drop a ranking or two when the season's over and said and done.
You know what I think is funny? I just looked this up because I was curious, because you talked about like the amount of touches that Deebo Samuel had. So I was like, you know what? I don't recall actually how many carries he really got. And then I went back and I looked at his game log and I looked back and I'm like, okay, he had 59 carries last year. 59. I get for a wide receiver, that's a lot, but it wasn't like some overly absurd amount of number of carries that he got. He didn't get Cordero Patterson style carries last year. And then there's this talk all off season that maybe he's not happy with his role. And I don't know if it's that anymore. Like I'm starting to doubt that it was like, oh, I don't want to play running back. I think it was more like, hey, I don't want to play running back and just get paid like a wide, maybe a bottom half of the top 5 wide receivers. Like if I'm going to play running back, now I should be top 5 of the wide receiver plus a little bit more of an incentive, right? Maybe that puts me into the top 2 or 3 wide receivers, maybe the number 1 overall. I think that's what it's more about, because when you're looking at his touches on the offensive side of the football, like they ran him when they needed to. And it wasn't like he was getting ran into the ground. So I do think there's a little bit of a drop off in amount of usage, because I do think Elijah Mitchell takes another step. They drafted another running back, and I think their style of offense also changes a little bit. We haven't mentioned the incorporation of a Trey Lance, how that's going to affect their passing game, but more so, how's it going to affect the running game? They're going to run a lot more RPOs. He's going to have the ball in his hands some more. He's going to get some of those carries that maybe Debo had. So I think his touches will drop a little bit, but he'll be good if he can stay healthy. That's all I can say. Because last year he did, every other year he didn't. So I like to see it a little bit more before I believe that he could be a top 5 fantasy asset for me.
Do you like that ADP that he has going right now, going in the second round?
I probably will never own Debo Samuel.
Yeah.
And again, it's just I think the way he plays, it's very much similar to the reason why I've never really owned George Kittle in a lot of leagues. Their style of play is so hard. Like they play every snap and they're taking hits. They look for contact that I just fear it too much. There's certain guys that do that and then they have a problem staying healthy. He's just one of those guys for me. The potential's there. Not knocking anybody that drafts him high. For me, he'll probably never be on one of my rosters.
Real quick, before I go to Dylan on the running backs in San Francisco, Aaron, you have been known on this show to talk about the rookie running back that they have, Davis Price, out of LSU. Are you taking a late round flyer on him? Is he like a late round flyer type of guy?
Depending on the situation. In rookie drafts, I took him a lot as a late round flyer because running backs they have been in flux in San Francisco, and I do think that he fits the read option style, one cut downhill that they're going to be using with Trey Lance. And Elijah Mitchell got banged up a little bit last year, so I like that. I don't know if I'm drafting him in a redraft league. Depending how deep your rosters are, you're probably not going to have to. He's not one of the handcuffs people are probably taking, so you probably don't have to.
That's fair. Dylan, we've talked on the show before about Elijah Mitchell and the carries that San Francisco and a Kyle Shanahan offense looks like for him. How should we be concerned in Elijah Mitchell falling victim to the Kyle Shanahan history of carries?
Yep. I mean, you look at that. The backfield is so. Aaron mentioned about the wide receivers. That's why I don't own George Kittle. They look for contact, whatever. I don't like owning any San Francisco 49er. Ayuk screwed you. No matter who you own, they tend to kind of screw you. I mean, they tend to go to different running backs constantly. You draft Mostert, he goes down. You get Jeff Wilson. He's going to be that guy. Psych. Trey Sermon's a rookie. He's going to have upside when Mostert gets hurt. Well, he's going to be inactive. I don't get it. I was never on board with Elijah Mitchell, but he was good last year. He was good. I'm not going to discredit that. The guy was a beast. But you just saw it on the graphic, right? Everybody comes in and then they wet their pants the following year. Or Shanahan just decides, we'll give someone else a crack. Maybe it's Jeff Wilson this year. Maybe they go to the hastiness of Jermichael. Or maybe they continue on to the rookie train and they actually do give rookie touches to someone, unlike Trey Sermon. They give it to Davis Price. Fisher Price. It's wild. I don't think that they can repeat it all.
So I don't want to say I disagree with Dylan because I do think it's hard to really kind of gauge the 49ers running backs. Every year it's somebody different. We talk about Raheem Mostert, guys like that. The only thing I'll say with Elijah Mitchell that really hasn't happened over the course of a Shanahan's career is the amount of touches he got when he was on the field last year. It wasn't like he was getting 12 carries, 14 carries, splitting time. When Elijah Mitchell played, it was 20 carries a game. It was 19 the first week, 17, 18, 27, 27, 22, like 21 to end the season. This wasn't a guy that was getting like running back by committee vibes for me. It was a guy who was actually getting volume. And I think that gives me a little bit incentive to maybe want him on my team. I do think if he stays healthy, he is the kind of guy that will see 18 to 20 carries a game just because of the style that the 49ers play. I worry about the injuries still, though.
Yeah, I worry about that team. I don't like anybody on that team. It's just
but again, it's just about ADP. At the end of the day, we have got to stress it's about value and where you're getting a player. So last year, Elijah Mitchell played he missed 6 or 7 games, went out early in a couple of games, and he finishes the RB 27. So if you're telling me I can get Elijah Mitchell as the RB in the third, or not the third or fourth round, but at that ADP, then I'm going to take him. Like I am going to draft him and feel comfortable doing so because he was able to produce at a starter flex level with not playing a full complement of snaps. And I like that. That's something that I'll take on my roster.
You're getting Elijah Mitchell in the third round, around the middle of the third round, at his current ADP right now, ahead of running backs like Travis. What?
No way you're getting him. Not the third round.
Fourth round. Math is hard. But you're getting him ahead of.
I think it's the fifth round.
Class of math.
But okay.
He's going at the 49th pick, and that's the fourth round.
That's the fifth round. 12, 24, 36, 48, 49 would be the beginning of the fifth round.
Oh, math! Holy shit! This guy's wicked smart. But either way, you're getting him ahead of Travis Etienne, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Breece Hall, A.J. Dillon, Miles Sanders. I think that is an okay value right there in terms of running backs. Like I would be okay with having Elijah Mitchell over those running backs. And I think I'd contemplate some, but I would be perfectly fine having Elijah Mitchell over those. Let's move on to the Arizona Cardinals here. AJ, we're going to keep this running back talk going. And talk about James. There you go. I like what you did there. We're going with James Conner. Last year we were terribly wrong about James Conner because we were avoiding him, and he ended up becoming a very, very valuable fantasy option. This season, he's the guy. There's no Chase Edmonds. Aaron's love for Benjamin is there, but James Conner is the running back one in Arizona. What should we expect from him as the guy in that backfield?
So I'm expecting a very close to repeat season with obviously some touchdown regression. I mean, 18 touchdowns last year was great, was fantastic. But as I mentioned earlier in the show, a lot of that came off of goal line scoring, which I imagine they will keep going. But who knows if he can do the exact same thing. What I'm worried about, or what I really need to see how they're going to use him is in the passing game. They brought Daryl Williams in, who's not like another world passer or anything, only 47 receptions last year. But when you look at what happened with Chase Edmonds out of the lineups from weeks 9 to weeks 14 last season, James Conner averaged 26.2 fantasy points a game and 5.5 targets while running routes on 61% of his snaps. So I don't know if they liked what they saw from him so much out of the passing game that they plan on using that a little bit more to their advantage. I would imagine that may be what you see in the first 6 weeks. And if he can keep that up, then it's going to be a bigger problem for defenses. And a lot of people are going to be much happier with James Conner. Let's not forget, you lost Christian Kirk, so there's some targets there. Let's not forget, Deandre Hawkins is going to be out for 6 weeks, so there's some targets there. Obviously, Marquise Brown, Hollywood steps in, and he's going to take some of those targets and take some of that look away from James Conner. But James Conner showed that he can be a pass-catching threat when given the opportunity. So I expect James Conner to be a guy that you can get. I'd say in the fourth round is probably where you're really looking for him. But I also expect people to reach because of what he did last year, and they're expecting exact repeat performance. But around the fourth round is what I'm looking for myself, and I think he's going to be a solid RB1.
You brought up the touchdowns, and I got this stat here. The top 5 players in terms of how much their fantasy points depended on touchdowns, 41% or close to 42% of James Conner's fantasy football points was because of touchdowns, second in the league. Aaron, how much stock do you put in a stat like this in terms of touchdown dependency and there being a big regression? And if this is where he regresses, he might not be able to return to form or even close to that.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about touchdown regression. It's been a big conversation in the fantasy community. It's always, you always regress to the means. But there are some offenses that just are going to produce touchdowns, right? Arizona is a high-powered, fast-paced offense. They're going to produce touchdowns, and there are always usually certain guys that are going to get those touchdowns. Kyler Murray, James Conner. They don't have a real big wide receiver threat. You have guys that can get down the field now, but there's no DeAndre Hopkins in that red zone. Maybe Zach Ertz picks up some of that slack. Maybe you get to see a Trey McBride get a couple. But I don't think there actually is going to be very much touchdown regression from James Conner. I think he's going to score a ton of touchdowns. I think the regression does come from Perhaps the passing game, maybe see him come off the field a little bit on third downs due to a Daryl Williams. Unfortunately, I do think Daryl Williams will play over Benjamin, but just because he's a veteran, he knows in the NFL and stuff like that. But I don't see much of a regression here from James Conner, other than maybe his efficiency on the offense, because now they don't have the outside threat of a DeAndre Hopkins. And then again, maybe the pass catching work a little bit, not too much. I still think he'll be able to get some work out of the backfield. But if he's healthy, he's gonna produce in that offense, and I think he scores another 12 to 14, 15 touchdowns this year. And he's going to be an easy, solid RB1, in my opinion. I don't think there's a chance in hell that James Conner is available in the 4th round.
Yeah.
Right now,
I know.
Going
13-14 was 13-14 was about my touchdown numbers where I was thinking he was going to drop off. Like when I say regression because you dropped the numbers, but I don't think he's dropping a single digits or anything regarded that he stays healthy.
Yeah, barring health. This is always, with him, it's always barring health.
Right. And that was most people's biggest fear when it comes to James Conner anyways.
Yeah. So you brought up DeAndre Hopkins and how that could without DeAndre Hopkins for 6 games, obviously suspended, affecting James Conner. Aaron, how much of DeAndre Hopkins not being there for the first 6 games affects Kyler Murray?
I thought it would be a lot. I thought it would be a lot. And I'm saying I thought because the more I've thought about it, I don't know that it's going to impact him as much as I originally thought. I'm sorry, I was trying to bring up we talked about Kyler Murray, and he got off to such a hot start over the past couple of seasons, but he's had these games where he's kind of not ran as much, and I think that's been the biggest thing to kind of his detriment as far as the fantasy aspect of it. But when DeAndre Hopkins was out last year, he started running a little bit more. When he was healthy, he started to get moving. He started to create yards offensively. And then now you add Hollywood Brown, who has that big playmaking ability. And I know Christian Kirk was that guy, but I'm sorry. Hollywood Brown right now is still better than Christian Kirk, in my opinion. He was a first-round pick. He's gotten better every year. And they have a connection. And so I think that's important. And then DeAndre Hopkins is only going to miss part of the season. So you get D-Hop back the middle of the part of the season, and then you have him and Hollywood Brown on that other side. You add in the tight ends to James Conner. I think Kyler will be fine. I think he'll manage the beginning part of the season. Maybe he doesn't have the great performances we're used to seeing, but he's a quarterback that can run the football. He's dangerous around in the red zone because he can run, and he has a cannon of an arm with a stretch down the field type receiver. He'll be fine. Maybe he's not the number 1 quarterback overall, but he's a starter. You're locked in your lineup when you're drafting him. Had his ADP, you're feeling pretty confident about it. Again, it's just a matter of does he take enough hits or not enough hits to where he stays on the field, because he's a littler guy, and injuries have obviously derailed him at times.
I still love that meme of him with the baby. He's shrunk down and he's got the big ball in his hand. It's great. It's great. Go ahead, Dylan.
It kind of reminds me of you holding the football.
Yeah. Except I have a noodle arm and he's actually a professional quarterback and stuff. But real quick though, and this could be for anybody. Dylan, if you want to answer this because you haven't really talked enough about the Cardinals. DeAndre Hopkins going around the 7th round right now in drafts, suspended 6 games. Are you? Is that tasty? Or is that I'm going to pass if he – because I feel like DeAndre Hopkins is going to end up being that player this year that ends up people passing on because he is suspended, and you end up getting that value. Like he's going in the 7th round right now, but you could see people passing on him, and he falls in the 9th, and you're like, hell yeah, I'm going to take DeAndre Hopkins. So where are you taking DeAndre Hopkins? Are you okay at 7? Or are you waiting for him to fall back more?
I'd like him to fall back a little bit more. Depends on my draft. If I'm doing the double whip, depends on where I'm at on the board. If it's like a middle
pick, I've never done that during my draft, but
but you know what I mean.
You're
picking like in the middle or something, and you're like, all right, yeah, if he's here, I'll give him a shot the 8th. But if I'm doing the double whip, I think I'd take him at 9, like the 9th round. I think that would be pretty cool. I think you get you get your starting roster, and then you're like, all right, am I good enough? Do I have enough durable guys that I feel safe taking a DeAndre Hopkins here? Now, if I got thinking off the top of my head, couple injury-prone wide receivers, and then you're like, Hopkins, let's go. That's sort of like, it doesn't really sit well. But if the roster looks well, I have no problem taking DeAndre Hopkins right there.
Okay.
I'm going to say I'll pass on D-Hop altogether this year. Unless it just gets stupid and he's there like in the 12th or 13th round. I hate saying this. And this is not some hot take. I'm not trying to start an argument or anything.
Good.
I think DeAndre Hopkins is on the decline, on the backside of his career. Very much like I said with Julio Jones. It's not just the greatness of DeAndre Hopkins and getting hurt, and it's just watching him play. They use him differently. He doesn't get off the line of scrimmage the same. He's not winning matchups one-on-one anymore. He's not creating separation. That makes it harder for players that are getting of that age, that have played a long time in this league and never missed games. Remember, DeAndre Hopkins never missed games until the last couple of seasons. So I'm going to be off the DeAndre Hopkins train. And if I get burned because he comes back and he has a great second half, so be it. But I have a feeling it's going to be more regular and average type play than greatness that we're used to seeing with DeAndre Hopkins.
I don't hate that take because I do remember feeling last year like there was just something off with DeAndre Hopkins. But at the same time, not counting last year, the year before, 1,400 yards, and we've just seen how talented he is. It would not shock me, and I don't think it'd shock you either, if he came back from his 6-game suspension in week 7 through 17, 18. He was just the same old DeAndre Hopkins, who was a crazy beast, who can catch every single ball thrown his way, a danger in the red zone, toe tapping in the corner. It's just I feel like I would need to see another year with question marks before I could confidently feel that type of fear with a DeAndre Hopkins. But I don't hate that thought process.
It's fair.
I turned down a couple trades for DeAndre Hopkins last year.
30. So I'll just say that 30. It scares me. It's 30 now. It's a
New
number
age
that
athletes,
just scares,
man. These guys get crazy.
It scares me in the NFL at the position, those skill positions when they hit that age. It's just too much football. And you're talking about a guy who's been in the league 10, 11 years. It's a lot of football. His body's been through a lot. He's played a lot of games. Yeah. I don't know.
Last year he had two games with 80+ yards. He didn't have a 100-yard game last year at all, and then the rest of his games were below 70 yards in terms of the yardage. And I don't hate that take touchdowns. Yeah, he will find a way to get 8 touchdowns. He's still a very talented wide receiver. Anything can happen. Right. But let's move on to our final team here, the Seattle Seahawks. And there's only one thing I want to talk about here. I know we talked about the running backs enough. We've already went through the Rashad Penny talk. There's only one thing that needs to be discussed when talking about the Seattle Seahawks. And I'm not going to say any more than DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Dylan, what is your view, your standpoint, your stance on DK and Tyler Lockett this upcoming season for fantasy?
It makes me sick. It makes me sick. It does. I went hard the last time. I went hard, and I'm ready to go hard again if old Soup Boy down there wants to try it. DK Metcalf. He's a physical specimen. The guy's he's literally everything you want in a wide receiver. Then you got the speed there to Tyler Lockett. They don't. It doesn't work. It doesn't. The two. Every other game, they tend to have great fantasy weeks, and you lose a Russell Wilson. You had that with Russell Wilson, where one of them dropped big numbers, the other one was all right. And I love consistency as a fantasy player. You don't get consistency from those guys. You're not getting that 18 a week. You're not getting those big time numbers that the wide receivers that you're getting in the second and third could be giving you. That's what I feel like is kind of screwing the pooch here with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. I don't trust either of them. Not because their talent is insane. From a fantasy perspective, they lose Russell Wilson. They get Drew Lock, Geno Smith, God forbid. I don't like them.
If this was, and Aaron, you're going to obviously go next to rebuttal here. But if this was that Around the Horn show, I would give you only 1 point for what you just said because you said screw the pooch. And that's the only thing. That's the only point you get from that. Aaron, go ahead.
Look, I came back and I clapped back when Dylan wasn't there. He just never shows up when he needs to show up. But the biggest clap back to that argument is you talk about the inconsistencies and you're just wrong. You can bring that up with Tyler Lockett all day, and we can have that conversation, and I would agree with you. But DK Metcalf, you mentioned, he always ends up with these single-digit games, 4 points, 3 points, 2 points. And then in that same art, you said, do I got to pull the tape? Because you compared it. You said you'd rather have Hunter Renfrow. And then so I was like, you know what? I went back and I said, let's talk about these because you said he was more consistent. So let's go back and let's look. Last year, DK Metcalf had 4 games in single digits. 4. You know how many Hunter Renfrow had?
6.
4. The difference is the games when he didn't have single digits, Hunter Renfrow got you 10, 11, 13, 9, or 12. DK Metcalf got you 30, 26, 18, 22. That you are so false when you talk about a narrative of that he's inconsistent. Go compare him, and we did this on the show. Compare him to the top receivers in the NFL and their single-digit games. Where does DK stack up? He's right there. They all have 3 or 4 or 5 games where they're in single digits. You do not get – we're not saying DK Metcalf is the number 1 overall receiver. He's being drafted in the late 3rd round. That's exactly where he should be drafted. He's your wide receiver too. What is wrong with that? So for you to say stay away, I just think it's false. I think the impact at quarterback is going to play a role big time for Tyler Lockett. We talked about the deep ball throwing of a Russell Wilson, his accuracy, the ability to make those big plays. I think you're spot on there. DK Metcalf, on the other hand, he's the guy that's going to win a 50-50 ball. He's a big body that's going to win over the middle. He's a big body Drew Lock's going to look at when he's scared and just throw it to, and he's going to make that catch. I don't think DK Metcalf at his ADP is quarterback proof. He is Terry McLaurin. He is those guys.
Allen Robinson.
He's Deontay Johnson. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. DK Metcalf will be a wide receiver too when it's all said and done. But he has the upside with great quarterback play of being a top 5 receiver in this league. And that's, to me, I'll take that all day long because I know what I'm going to get at the end of the season. It's as simple as that.
Can I ask if this compares? Don't need to slap me if you want. Drive here this weekend, slap me, do whatever you want. If you look 2016, Allen Robinson was coming off his insane year, right? Opposite receiver. This was just 1 year base, but bad quarterback play, 50-50 baller, physical specimen, Allen Robinson. Allen Hurns, on the other hand, had 1,000 yards as well coming off that year. 2 solid receivers going into that year. Do you feel that DK Metcalf is sort of ranked how Allen Robinson was in 16 with quarterback proof, if you will?
I don't know. I think the quarterback play is baked into his ADP. I think the only reason DK Metcalf is not a wide receiver, top 10 wide receiver is because of quarterback play.
Yeesh.
Like DK Metcalf, he can never do this because it's what if game. If you give DK Metcalf a quarterback that is going to get him the football, he is going to be a top wide receiver. Remember, we talked about DK Metcalf having a bad year last year. Russell Wilson is the one that didn't play very well last year. People were talking about Russell Wilson not being at his best. He got injured. That DK Metcalf suffered. We saw what DK Metcalf did when Geno Smith came in. He was able to produce with Geno Smith already. He showed he could do that. I think this guy is matchup proof. Seattle is going to be behind in a lot of games because they're not a very good football team. I am not scared of DK. Matter of fact, I hope everybody is because he will be on many of my teams if he's available in that 3rd round, and I can take him as my 2nd wide receiver. I just think it's great value, and I think it's already baked in. You don't need to worry about having to stress, oh, no, is the quarterback play going to be good enough for me? I don't think it matters.
I'm starting to get more sold on the guy, and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, what are you guys laughing at? That's the 2 straight mornings you guys chuckle at me at this hour.
You're just great for this show. You're a good character, buddy.
Yeah.
You're just really getting my mind in shambles right now. I think this dude could put up Randy Moss numbers with a Kirk Cousins.
Jesus Christ.
I'll say this to take it away from that like crazy comments. Is it crazy to say that DK Metcalf catches 80 balls and has close to 1,000 yards this year? Is it crazy?
Sounds
Close
like
to?
his norm.
Eee. Ew,
Yeah,
that
it
sounds
like
bad.
Sounds like his norm.
That's a bad year, right? His last year was a bad year. He had 75 catches, 967 yards. He got the 12 touchdowns, which is big. He's going to be a touchdown threat. And he finished as the wide receiver 14.
Are they going to get across the 50? Gino?
In a bad season, a terrible season at that, he finished as wide receiver 14. I'll easily DK Metcalf is a high-end wide receiver too.
That scares me. You brought up those numbers, and it scares me. It does, because the touchdowns, I think that regresses to half.
Okay, I'll give you I'll give you that. Say he doesn't score as many touchdowns. Maybe he only gets, I don't know, about half. Maybe he gets 7 or 8 touchdowns.
With Gino.
967 yards in an offense that's playing from behind. You don't think that's possible? To go over 1,000? He only had 75 catches.
Who's to say that behind?
They're terrible.
The world?
Their team is terrible.
Okay, let me end this. Let me end this on this note. There was a report that came out yesterday from Josina Anderson that the Seattle Seahawks are back in on Baker Mayfield. It seems like everybody's getting back in on Baker Mayfield. DK Metcalf, wide receiver 1 with Baker Mayfield? I'd say so.
Borderline wide receiver 1.
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Guy hasn't.
Borderline wide receiver 1.
He
Hasn't
didn't know how to do it with Odell. Didn't know how to do it with Jarvis.
First of all,
that's a surface statement. There's so much more to that.
First of all, DK Metcalf right now in his career is far better than Odell, far better than Jarvis Landry or any of them. Odell was coming off knee injuries and he was older. Like, he was still electric, but he wasn't DK Metcalf electric. That's a different type of specimen right there.
This may be some lazy analysis here, or however you want to describe it. Baker Mayfield and some of his throws that I've seen him make, I think DK Metcalf could go up and get those throws that Baker Mayfield makes. Sometimes an inaccurate passer with the deep ball. He throws a great deep ball. He's strong arm, but with his inaccuracy, I think DK Metcalf could be a perfect type of wide receiver for that, to be able to make Baker Mayfield look much better than he really is. Not to say he's a bad quarterback. Do not get on me for that. But I think I agree. Baker Mayfield in Seattle, DK Metcalf is a borderline fringe wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2.
I'm going to just say it because I truly believe this. DK Metcalf will finish in the top 10 in wide receivers this year.
Without Baker?
I don't care who the quarterback is. Top 10. I truly believe that. Like, to me, it's about circumstance. And the circumstances are, give me all the shares of teams that are playing from behind that have to throw the ball 40 times a game and they get garbage points. I love it all. I'll take it all.
Let's end the show on this then. Real quick, give me your top 10 wide receivers. I want to see who you leave off for DK Metcalf, who has 2 locked in that. Because it's very interesting.
I'm going to bring up a list then. I'm going to bring up a list.
That's fine. And while you do that, I will bring up the fact that, like, normally, like, Dylan would say something like, and I'm not saying
I'm ready. I got my list.
11:09 in the morning. You're asking him to do a top 10 list?
I'm ready. I got my list.
Yes.
Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Mike Evans, Deontay Johnson, DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill, and AJ Brown.
I don't hate it because when you look at like the top 10 wide receivers that are going in terms of ADP, Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, you named all those. I can see Debo dropping out. I'm surprised you didn't have CD on there.
He's close. That's CD Lamb and AJ Brown would be borderline top 10. Yeah. So it would be, I can interchange them. Maybe I do like CD a little bit better because of the competition level of a Devontae Smith in Philly and the quarterback. So maybe I put
Keenan Allen. No Keenan Allen.
No,
okay. That's fair. Wow. That's all I wanted to know. And we'll break down more of your rankings as the fantasy season progresses. This was a very good show. We had a lot of good talking points. I hope everyone enjoyed it. We'll be back again for one more morning show tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time, right here on YouTube at the Sac City Pod. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media pages at Sac City Pod. Here you go, right here. There's the social read. It's good morning. Sac City. We hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. For your boy AJ Johnson, for the Mukes I, Aaron Mukes, and for the smoothest voice in sportscast and Dylan Kearns, I am me. We will see you tomorrow.
Peace out.
Bye.
We know we were a much better team than we came up representing ourselves.